Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's broadcast. My name is Caroline Flanagan. For those of you who don't know me, I am a certified coach. I specialize in a subject very close to my heart. I'm very passionate about imposter syndrome and also do lots of coaching around work-life balance. But I'm all about imposter syndrome this year, 2021. It is definitely my focus. I am also a keynote speaker. I do lots of talks. So if you're listening to this, you've seen me at one of your company talks, then that is also a key part of what I do. I'm the author of Be the First, Imposter Syndrome, People of Colour, and the Struggle to Succeed in a White World. And I'm the host of the Caroline Flanagan Show. Welcome to this week's broadcast. Now, isn't it amazing? A week ago today, I was lamenting how absolutely freezing it is here in the UK, how shockingly cold the weather has been. And now today, it's Monday the 19th, and it's been the most beautiful day. I cannot tell you. It was actually so hot, I couldn't even sit outside. I tried to work in my garden for an hour or so. I'm really lucky I've got a garden. So tried to do some work there this afternoon, and it was too hot. It was such a strange feeling. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and acknowledge my gratitude for having sunshine, sunlight, blue skies today. So overdue, really important. And wherever you are watching this, whether it's on the replay or live, I hope you've had a beautiful sunny day too. Right, so today's broadcast is about feeling valued. I want to talk about feeling valued. I know that this is a very important topic for you. It's something that comes up, I'd say, in 99% of my clients. When we talk about what their objectives are for coaching, it always comes up, they want to feel more valued. And I do a bit of digging around to try to understand what that means. What is it they're looking for that they're not getting? And I feel like it's very important to share then the outcome of some of my coaching sessions and my views and my insights on feeling valued, so that if this is something that it's important for you, then you can also get some great value out of this broadcast. So feeling valued, what does that mean? Well, it's a reflection of how much we put into things, isn't it? How much we put into work, into the projects, into our responsibilities. And when you're giving so much of yourself, when you're working so hard, it's only natural, isn't it, to expect, to hope for something in return, to get that recognition that you're doing a good job and that those that you are doing it for really value you. So this is the focus of today's session. And there's a message I want you to take away from today, which is this. If being valued is important to you, being valued by others, by your boss, by your family, perhaps, by those you work with, if that is really important, then the first and your most important priority is to value yourself. So if you want to feel valued, you must start by valuing yourself. That's the message I want you to take away from today's session. So here's what's coming up over the next, well, I think it will be 20, 25 minutes or so, but you never know. I might get quite excited and carried away with my examples. But here's what's coming up. And first of all, we're going to talk about why valuing yourself as a way of feeling valued is so important. And then I'm going to share 5 mistakes, really common mistakes that I see my clients, see people making all of the time. And quite possibly you are making too. And then I'm going to share my 1 tip on how you can start really to value yourself in a way that's going to help you feel more valued. And that tool, that tip is the 80-20 rule. Now, you've probably come across the 80-20 rule, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what it is. But there's a special twist, a little spin I'm putting on it in this context, which I think you're really going to love. So first of all, then, just to put this into context for myself, I talk a lot about external validation and the importance of not relying too much on external validation. I talk about it with my clients. I've talked about it in my book, in Be the First. And actually on that point, there's a great example. If you've listened to any of my previous episodes or broadcasts, you may have heard me talk about the way in which I evaluate the success of Be the First, and the fact that I haven't, my focus is not on the number of copies that I sell as a way of judging whether it's been a success or not, as a way of validating the work that I've done or the value that it brings. I was very clear, and I wrote about it in the book as a way of illustrating to you the importance of defining your own success criteria and having that be within your control. So for me, it's a very important part of how I ensure I can both recognize my own achievements, internally validate my own achievements, and also that I'm not so dependent. It doesn't mean I'm immune to it. It doesn't mean I don't care about what others think, but I'm not completely dependent on the views of others for my self-worth, for my self-belief, and for my ability to show up as the best version of myself that I can. So very relevant to me too. And interestingly, last week I delivered a talk on imposter syndrome, and I felt it went really well. I was pleased with how it went. I got some great feedback. There were some wonderful comments, like private messages on LinkedIn, acknowledging how inspirational, how valuable, and how engaging the talk had been. And I wrote, as I normally would after a session, I wrote to the organizers, gave them my kind of feedback from the speaker's point of view and my suggestions. And I also, of course, invited them to come back to me with their feedback, both from an organizational point of view, but also the content. Now, it took quite a few days for them to reply to me. And what I noticed was that I was getting quite sort of edgy about having this reply. I was getting quite attached to waiting for this response to my email, in which I, of course, hoped to see words to the effect that I'd, done a good job, that they'd found the talk exactly what they wanted, what they expected, that it was inspirational, all of those things. So when the email came in, what day is it? It's Monday, right? So when the email came in today, and I read it, I realized how I'd kind of been putting a lot of attachment into their response. So into this external validation of an event that I already could tell had gone well and had received other individual feedback from members of the audience indicating that it had gone well. I was suddenly getting caught up in this need or desire for this, or over desire for external validation. And I thought this is exactly the right topic to bring to you this week to talk about that. I'm just looking out the window and I've just seen that my dog has escaped out of the front. So while I'm talking to you, I'm going to just message my son that the dog is outside, because there's a road there and I can see she's outside and she shouldn't be. So just bear with me. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, there you go. That just goes to show how real life it is. There we go. I've sent an emergency message to one of my kids to go and get her so she doesn't run off. Couldn't have that. Okay. So I was talking about being over-attached to external validation and how important it was to remind myself of the need to not depend on this in order to feel valued, and to share that with you. So I'm going to talk about why it's, I've already said it. So coming up, I'm going to talk about why depending on yourself for feeling valued is important. I'm going to talk about the 5 mistakes. I'm going to share the 80-20 rule. I've already told you that. So I got sidetracked by my dog. Okay, so let's talk about why then. Why is validating yourself, valuing yourself so critical, so important? Why is it important not to just rely on other people to value you? The first reason is that as long as you're going to rely on other people to tell you you are valuable, you're never going to be as powerful, as confident as you could be. So much can depend on whether other people tell you that you are valuable or valued or not. It can depend on the kind of person they are. They might not be someone who likes to express that kind of positive affirmation towards somebody. You know, your boss might be someone who doesn't really believe in constantly complimenting their staff. You might work with somebody who has all sorts of things going on for them personally, which enables them to not even really see or be willing to articulate your value because of what they feel that says about them. You may be working with someone who's just got so much going on in their own lives that it doesn't occur to them to think about your need to feel valued or to demonstrate how valued you are. You might be surrounded by people who are so confident in your value. They're so convinced of your value. It seems to them so obvious that you're valuable that it doesn't even occur to them that you might need that external validation. You might need the reassurance and recognition from them that you are valuable. To them, it might be completely obvious. There are lots of reasons why, if you were to only depend on other people to make you feel valued, you are at risk of undervaluing yourself or feeling undervalued, less valued than you actually are, because of what's going on with other people. And what we don't want is to be so dependent on that. What we want is to be able to value ourselves and know our own value rather than being dependent on others. Another reason, the second reason why it's important to be able to value yourself is all about how you show up. So it's all very well getting compliments or recognition from others, but what really matters is that in the moment when you're facing a challenge, in the moment when an opportunity comes up, in the moment when you are on the spot, you can personally feel your own value during that moment that enables you to show up as the valuable person you are. You have to, in those moments, be able to believe in your own value, your own ability, your own experience, your own insights, in order to display those, to deliver those qualities when the time is right. If there's no one around there propping you up with this external validation, it's really important you've got your own sense of self-worth and value to fall back on, or not even to fall back on, that drives how you show up to a particular challenge. So if you think about me doing this talk last week, in the moment of stepping onto the virtual stage, in the moment of starting to talk, in the moment when I'm being asked questions, I need to have a sense of my own value. In those moments, it's not enough for me to think back and think, oh, well, what have other people said about me? How have they told me that they value me? I need to believe it. I need to feel it and experience it myself in those moments in order to show up as my best. So that's the second reason why valuing yourself is so important. And the third reason, there is a third reason, just looking down at my notes now, as to why it's important to value yourself. And that's because you are that much more better able to, it's not just about showing up as the best version of yourself, it's about being able to project that to others. That's the third reason I'm looking for. So other people take cues from you about your value. Okay, so if you are somebody who doesn't value yourself, then that is a cue that other people will pick up on you, pick up on. If you are someone who does value yourself, then other people will pick up on that too, and it will make it so much easier for them to see the value in you if you are already believing that and projecting that towards them. So 3 really important reasons why valuing yourself is the first most important step to feeling valued. So now I want to talk about the 5 mistakes that are so commonly made when it comes to this whole idea of your own self-worth, your own self-value. So the first mistake is, I think, the over-reliance on other people to tell you you're valuable when you don't value yourself. Okay, so this idea that it's somebody else's job, somebody else's responsibility to tell you how valuable you are before you can feel that value yourself. Can you see what you do when you go out into the world not valuing yourself, but hoping that other people will see your value and feed it back to you? Can you see what a big expectation you are putting on other people? the assumption you are making about other people's responsibility to mirror your value to you, to see something in you that you can't see. And yet, time and again, I work with or I hear people talking about themselves as if they are less than good enough, as if you don't value yourself. Certainly if you suffer from imposter syndrome, really downplaying your achievements, and yet hoping, expecting, praying that other people will see something different in you than you see in yourself. Such a fundamental mistake, because as I've said, the message you project, the amount that you value yourself is what you project to others. So how on earth can you expect others to value you more than you value yourself? That's the first mistake. The second mistake is not taking ownership of your own self-worth. So I love this word ownership, and it can be used quite vaguely. So I'm going to just make it absolutely clear what I mean when I talk about ownership. It's two things. It's taking responsibility for something and then taking action to create a particular result. So in the context of feeling valued, what I want is for you to take responsibility for how valued you feel. And I want you to take the action that makes you feel valued. Can you see the difference there between what I see so many of you doing, which is thinking it's somebody else or hoping that somebody else will value you? Yeah, that is kind of shirking the responsibility a little bit of valuing yourself. Yeah. And then the action you take, maybe you're working really hard. I'm not saying you're not. Maybe you're working really hard and trying to send this message to other people that you're valuable without believing it yourself. So you're not really taking responsibility for how valued you feel, and you're not really taking action that makes you feel valued. You're taking action that makes other people think that you're valuable so that they can feed it back to you. So that's the second mistake, is not taking ownership of how valued you feel, not taking responsibility and then taking the action. The third mistake I see people making is this fear of bragging, fear of talking yourself up, of being perceived as arrogant. And I get it. I totally get that we don't want to be those people. And there are lots of people out there that maybe you've come across or maybe you work with who are a bit like that, and you don't like that, or maybe culturally it just doesn't fit. But what's really important, I say this to you, I said it to a client a couple of weeks ago, there's nothing wrong with bragging to yourself. In fact, you are the person you absolutely should brag to. And in doing so, reflect to yourself, recognize in yourself the things that you are great at, the things that you do well. Bragging to yourself is really just another way of saying, I'm valuable, and these are the reasons why. So the third mistake then, which you may be making, is this kind of, I don't want to brag, and therefore you're so desperate not to brag, you actually undermine your own value to yourself. So the fourth reason why, or the fourth mistake rather, that you may be making when it comes to valuing yourself is actually just not knowing your value. How many times have I had a conversation with a client where I've talked to them about, well, let's do this work on you valuing yourself. What do you have to value about yourself? What is it about you that is of value? And actually getting clients to articulate that, to recognize that, is incredibly hard. So it's a question I want for you. If I ask you, what is there to value about you? What could you value in yourself? Would you know how to answer that question? Or are you making the same mistake of not even knowing what your value is, but kind of hoping that somebody else out there will discover it, will identify it, will tell you what it is? The fifth mistake I want to point out is you're ignoring the evidence. And this evidence is there's two aspects to this. First of all, there's the ignoring the evidence that you are valued. So, for example, You may be given compliments all the time, but you quickly dismiss them. And maybe I don't mean compliments necessarily, but recognition, praise is probably a better word, positive feedback, but you dismiss it and perhaps focus on one negative aspect of something you did, or one learning point, or one negative bit of feedback. And you dismiss all of the positive stuff that actually is sending you the message of how valued you are, how valuable other people think you are. So missing that evidence. Another example of missing evidence might be, I don't know, maybe you're promoted and you spend 5 minutes being excited about being promoted, and then you're back to questioning yourself, wondering if you, of course you are, wondering if you deserve to be there, if you've got imposter syndrome, of course this is your trait. Again, looking for this external validation, because that's the problem with external validation. It's never enough, actually. We need to keep, it's like this sort of insatiable need within us to hear external validation. If you rely on it, the more you rely on it, the more you need it, and the less able you are to validate yourself if you're constantly searching for this external validation the whole time. So this idea of like, you get a promotion and that's a form of external validation, but you very quickly move on to all of the reasons why you don't deserve to be there, or it shouldn't have been you, or all the reasons why you're not good enough. You're ignoring the evidence that that promotion represents of how valued you are. So that's the fifth mistake. So I want to ask you, is there evidence in the conversations that you are having right now, in the opportunities that you are being given that come your way right now? Is there evidence around you of how valued you are, but you are overlooking them, quick to dismiss them, because you're quite possibly too attached to this story of not being valued? And I'd even want to add, having said there are only 5 mistakes, I kind of want to be really cheeky and add that 6th one, because it seems like something to really accentuate here. The idea that, as I've just said, if you completely lost my chain of thought now, I'm in the middle of a live broadcast. The 6th point, just give me a second here, of but yes, the 6th point of needing to be told that you are valuable, relying on that promotion, relying on being told, and it just feeding the monster. I've lost the 6th point. We're just going to keep going. It might come back to me, in which case I'll go on. So lesson to myself: stick with your 5 mistakes and don't add another one at the end, because you might lose your chain of thought. Okay, so what's the answer then? What is the solution to or what's the opposite, right, of not making these mistakes? What's the answer to feeling valued? And the answer I want to offer you is that you value yourself. And the way I want you to do that is by using the 80-20 rule. Now, you may have heard of the 80-20 rule. It's also known as Pareto's law. And it relates to a simple explanation of it is that 80% of your effort, right, actually produces only 20% of your results, of like the positive results, the results that count. Conversely, and the way to use this really effectively is to find the 20% of your effort or your actions that will produce 80% of your results. So that's a loose kind of description of Pareto's law, also known as the 80-20 rule. So I want to use that rule in helping you to be better at valuing yourself in order that you can feel more valued. Now, there are 3 parts to this. The first one is 80% of your self-worth and sense of how valuable and valued you are should be internally generated. In other words, I want you to be the one that's responsible for 80% of how valuable and good you feel. And only 20% of how valuable and good you feel do I want to be down to any external validation that you receive. What does that mean? It means, I was talking to this about my 11-year-old boy a few hours ago, to Luca. So Luca's been out playing football earlier today, and I was explaining to him how I would apply the 80-20 rule to his sense of being a valuable football player. So what I said to him was, Luca, at the end of your football session, when your coach said to you, "Oh, well done, Luca, you've played really well today," I want that compliment, that external validation, to only account for 20% of how good you feel about how you played today. I want the other 80% of how good you feel to be self-generated. I want it to be you that have been able to evaluate what you've done well, to really recognize what you've done well, recognize the value you brought to your team, and for you to feel like for 80% of how good you feel to come from your own recognition, so to be internally generated. So I hope that makes sense. When you receive some positive feedback from a client, I want you to be wonderful, excited about that, feel good about that, but I want that to only account for 20% of the kind of self-esteem, self-worth boost you get as a result of that. The rest needs to be internally generated by your ability to see your own value in that particular situation. So the second way to apply this 80-20 rule as a way of valuing yourself is that whenever you have some external validation, I think I've just described that actually. Yes, external validation. So when it comes in, it can only represent 20% of your value. And what that shows, and this is the second point, is that when we're looking for the ideal balance between the feeling of being valuable that you get from other people and the amount you can generate yourself, you want it to be 80-20. You always want it to be 80-20. So I was working with a client recently, and I asked her, where are you now? How much of your confidence, how much of your self-worth is generated externally? How much is it generated internally? And she said, I think I'm actually about 50-50. So 50% of how good I feel about myself, how valuable I feel, comes from external factors, what others have said to me and the praise I receive. And about 50% comes from how good I feel about myself. And so I'm working with her to get her from 50-50 to 80-20, so that she can generate 80% of her value, her self-confidence, her self. And so that the external validation is just the cherry on top. It's the icing on the cake that just complements her sense of self-worth. And that's what we're working towards. And we've been having some amazing conversations about what that may look like. How do we get her from 50% internally generated value up to 80? What could she do? What could she do differently? What does she need to think differently? So 80-20, I want you to see that as a fantastic balance and give that a try and challenge yourself. How could you generate that amount of self-worth, self-value? And then my final point about applying this 80-20 rule is that the 80% of you that has to be self-generated, of your self-worth that has to be built internally, comes so easily when you have your imposter speech, when you know who you are, when you can answer the question, who am I? And that's the question, remember, that's when your imposter speech is triggered, it's this puzzle that your brain wants you to solve. It's the question, who am I? And when you've got an imposter speech that answers that question, that draws on your past achievements and successes, your stepping stones to where you are now, when you've got a speech that draws on your motivating, the real drivers behind what you do, the motivational force, the energy behind what drives you, when you've got a speech that can draw on all the challenges, the obstacles, the setbacks that you've had to overcome, that you've faced on the way to where you are now, when you have an imposter speech that can draw on your sense of purpose and your goals, when you have all of that, that answers the question, who am I? Then there's your value. It's already there for you. You've already done the work of understanding the enormous value that you can bring. You don't have to be scrabbling around for it in the moment when you need it, trying to think, oh, what's my value? You don't have to be, to take the example of me coming off my talk and thinking, oh, did I have value? And was I valuable in that session? All I needed to do was draw on my imposter speech, remind myself of the value that I was bringing. It wasn't just about the words I said in that hour. In that hour, I was bringing the value of everything that I am, the value of my answer to my imposter syndrome, the answer that is my imposter speech. And when I can tap into that so easily, that 80% of self-worth, of knowing my own value, is already there. So lots for you to take away from today's session. Most importantly, two things. First of all, your desire to feel valued. If you want to feel more valued, it depends enormously on valuing yourself. In fact, you'll never feel fully valued unless and until you've done the work to value yourself. And in order to do the work to value yourself, I'm suggesting you apply this 80-20 rule. Generate 80% of your self-worth internally. And the way you do that, of course, is with this wonderful tool that I've given you, I've created for you. It's called, and for me, by the way, created it myself first, and now I'm sharing it with you, the Imposter Speech, which is designed to give you access to that value in an instant, because you already have your whole life's value at your fingertips there when you need it. I hope you found this really useful, apart from my slight blip on thinking I'm going to give you the sixth mistake and then not remembering what it was. It's completely gone, so it can't have been as important. But I hope you've found this really interesting and food for thought, really questioning your need, your dependence, which is what's the case for a lot of my clients. Dependence and need for external validation, and the idea that you'll never get enough. The more you rely on it, the more you're going to need. But what we want is for you to have the confidence that is internally generated, your own self-belief. Because when you have that, how you show up is going to be so much more different. You're going to be showing up as someone who believes in themselves, believes their own value. And guess what? That's going to dramatically impact the results that you are able to create in your life, in your work. And of course, it's going to massively impact how good you feel about yourself and how satisfied you are with what you're doing in your work and in your life. So that's it from me. I wish you lots of luck in finding your 80% of internally generated self-worth. If this is something that's of interest to you, if you'd like to explore your imposter speech, develop that with me as your coach, I'm going to be doing some fantastic group coaching around the imposter speech. Come and join me, join one of my group programs and get the energy and feed off other people who are creating their imposter speech as well. It's amazing what can be created in a, well, obviously one-to-one with me, but also in a group scenario. It's even more powerful. So if this is of interest to you, have a look at my website, carolineflanagan.com. You will see under imposter, just search imposter and you'll see where you can register your interest in the imposter speech coaching program, the group one, which I'm really excited to roll out later this year. And then my last call to action, if you like this content, if you'd like to receive more of my free content, it's so valuable. If you want to put this to work, put it into action, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Please subscribe if you're listening to the podcast. And if you're on Facebook, you have questions, you have comments, please do put them in the comments box. I'd love to answer them. And if you're listening to this, by the way, just having not heard of me before or not being part of the Imposter Speech Group, then I want to invite you to join. It's called the Imposter Speech Group, or the Imposter Syndrome Imposter Speech Group. And I'm here, I'm live every Monday. I'm recording the podcast, recording this live and I'll be here and ready to answer any questions you may have on this incredibly valuable content that I'm here and very happy to share with you. That's it from me this week. I hope you have a beautiful week. I hope the sun that keeps shining for us here in the UK, and I hope you go out and you start to really value yourself. That's it from me. Bye for now.